This kid is an absolute legend. After reincarnating, he just wanted to check if he was a boy or a girl, but the maid nearby mistakenly thought the young master had wet the bed. Before he could even react, she had already pulled his pants down. The protagonist was completely stunned by this. To ease the embarrassment, he tried to distract himself by focusing on eating. Unexpectedly, after he finished eating, the maid pulled him into a hug, which caused him to have an accidental reaction down there. Although he wanted to resist, his 2.5-year-old body left him completely powerless. However, thanks to her constant care, he was able to learn a lot about this new world. As it turns out, our protagonist was born into a noble family. His father also had 2 wives. The first wife gave birth to 2 sons, while the second wife had him and his sister. However, more than all that, he was most interested in this world of swords and magic. Eager to use magic as soon as possible, it took him only 2.5 days. To learn how to read, even his parents were convinced their son was a genius. But they felt it was still far too early for him to start learning magic. He would have to wait at least another 2.5 years, until he was 5 and could undergo his baptism at the church. The protagonist agreed, but internally he was incredibly impatient. Back in his room, he decided to give it a casual try, but unexpectedly he actually pulled it off. Luckily, the maid is a total airhead and didn't notice a thing. Excited, the protagonist decided to go for another round, but he nearly ended up burning the whole house down. Although the maid was just as easy to fool as before, little did he know that his sister had already slipped into his room. Well, it turns out his sister is also quite an airhead. Just like that, after another 2.5 weeks of studying, he quickly gained a solid understanding of the country's history. His heart raced with excitement, especially upon learning about the existence of other races, and he couldn't calm down for a long while. 2.5 years flew by. Soon it was time for his baptism, marking his first time traveling far from home to see the outside world. To help her brother understand what it feels like to be granted magic, his sister opened her status panel as an attribute reference. However, one particular detail on it caught his attention. The entry actually listed loving my little brother as her top priority. But after seeing his sister's reaction, he could only play dumb. The group soon arrived at the church. The 7 statues before them represented the actual 7 pillar gods. By praying to them, one receives a random divine protection from the gods. But just as the Archbishop finished the incantation, the 7 statues suddenly erupted with a brilliant, dazzling light. When he came to he found himself in the realm of the 7 pillar gods. The god of life who controls reincarnation told him that his death in his previous life was a bit of a clerical error. Though he was fatally stabbed by a criminal while trying to save a girl, the truth was that the culprit would have tripped on his own even without his help, only to be apprehended by nearby citizens. In other words, not only did he die for nothing, but he also indirectly increased the culprit's sentence from 2.5 years straight to life imprisonment. Seeing Cain crying even harder, the god of life hurried forward to comfort him, since he had performed a truly noble deed in his previous life. The gods of earth reached out to the 7 pillars and requested that he be reincarnated into this world. Despite his regrets, Cain was grateful to the god for allowing him to retain the memories of his past life. Admiring his character, the 7 pillar gods decided to each bestow a unique divine blessing upon him. Some of these blessings granted him extraordinary abilities. He would need to experiment to understand them fully, but as time was running short, the gods sent Cain back to his world. Seeing the statues emit such a dazzling radiance, his father was eager to inspect his son's status panel, but recalling the gods' parting smirks, Cain couldn't shake off an ominous feeling. Using a bathroom break as an excuse, he hurried to a secluded corner. When he opened his status, he was absolutely floored. All 7 attribute levels were at 10, given that the limit for a normal person is only level 5. Showing this to his family would probably give them a heart attack. Luckily, he noticed the creator god had granted him a concealment skill. After making some quick adjustments, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, Cain never expected that he had still overlooked a few values. Upon seeing the 7 divine blessings and an insane mana capacity of over 300, his father was left completely shell-shocked. For context, even high-ranking royal mages only possess around 10 mana. At just 5 years old, his potential was immeasurable, but if word got out, the kingdom would surely view him as a major threat. After his father swore everyone to absolute secrecy, Cain finally returned to his room, where the sweet call of his bed awaited him. The magic book caught his eye after everything he'd been through. All he wanted now was to be comforted by some fluffy creatures, so he rushed outside, eager to perform a summoning. But much to his surprise, what appeared was a hairless minotaur. Just then, his sister and a cat girl happened to walk by. Without a second thought, he stepped in front to shield them. Determined not to let the tragedy of his past life repeat itself, he decided to put his new magic skills to the ultimate test. However, lacking real combat experience, his first strike failed to land. Fortunately, with his insane mana capacity, a massive magic circle appeared and instantly vaporized the minotaur. But the massive mana drain left him completely exhausted. Luckily, before passing out, he finally caught a glimpse of the fluffiness he'd craved. The next day, During his birthday celebration, his father asked about his dream. He replied that to protect everyone's smiles, he wanted to become an adventurer, travel the world and meet all kinds of people. Meanwhile, the 7 pillar gods were gathered elsewhere discussing a serious matter. Among them, the god of creation noted that if he doesn't become the strongest in the world by age 16, the entire world will be doomed.